Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Yeah, I have my shirt off. Don't worry about it. I tried to put a shirt on, but just swam in the ocean and it feels really weird. So I need to shower first, but we're going to go over everything you need to know about Tesla and the broader markets here in this video. Today's been a pretty eventful day. Tesla stock is down about 2% at the time of recording this video. And we do have the major event really for markets this week coming tomorrow. And there's a lot of different opinions that are getting thrown out there of what that's going to do to markets. And really a lot of fear mongering, I believe, more than anything else. But there could be more fear that comes into markets depending on the potential outcome, and we'll speak on that in this video as well. Let's start with some breaking news today for Tesla. Tesla's just built its 10,000th Megapack, and it looks like the Boring Company's tunnel connecting Giga Texas to an outbound, what is presumably going to be a parking lot, is almost finished, and we will be having cars flowing through this in what looks like no time. And it looks like the Tesla Cybertruck dually is heading to the 2024 SEMA show in Las Vegas. The Model Y was the best-selling EV in Sweden last month. Battery electric vehicles, BEVs, had 35.1% market share in the country, with the Model Y far outselling even the second best-selling vehicle in Sweden. And Tesla sold 68,280 China-made EVs in October, down 5.3% year over year. The data from the China Passenger Car Association, the CPCA, showed on Monday. Tesla has launched third-party business tokens, allowing third-party apps to give more value to Tesla owners. Quote, third-party applications can now interact with cars they have been granted access to by a Tesla for business admins. And nearly 5 years after its original unveiling, Tesla Cybertruck deliveries have officially begun today in Canada. Tesla has secured a new $200 million Megapack contract in New South Wales, Australia. The project will consist of two $100 million battery energy storage systems, each sized at 200 megawatts, 400 megawatt hours, with construction that will start in mid to late 2025. And it looks like Tesla has installed a 45-foot LED screen at its upcoming Hollywood diner and supercharger. Another one will be installed as well, and you'll be able to watch movie clips while you charge and eat. The glass door to the diner has also been installed, so getting closer and closer to being operational. And before we go over the option activity, the short position in Tesla, some sentiment barometers, we need to talk what's happening in markets today, because again, tomorrow is your major event for this week and really for this year. Everyone's been waiting for the election, and there is implications to different sectors and the economy as a whole based on who wins this election and the makeup of Congress. As I've said before here on this channel, the worst thing possible is a sweep and a contested election. So if we don't know who the president is going to be for an extended period of time, that is a major problem for markets because it really affects liquidity. Okay, so about 80% of the volume you see on the S&P, sometimes more, sometimes less, on any given day is just market makers pinging orders back and forth just to create a market, just have liquidity out there. Okay, about 20% of the order flow in the markets is actual orders, right? Actually people buying stocks. Well, if you don't know who the president is, and there's a period of wide uncertainty, then you will see that 20% of buyers really slow down. And it doesn't take much to tip that balance and start seeing prices decline by a wide margin. Now, we won't know if it's a sweep until we know who the president is, so I think a contested election is probably the more imminent worst case scenario, let's be honest. But, I mean, there is always that chance, like Al Gore and Bush in 2000, where you don't know who the president is for a month or so, and that's where this would be a huge problem. Personally, if we have the election tomorrow, if we don't know by tomorrow night, which most people think we won't, if we know by Wednesday morning or midday Wednesday, this is not going to be a huge problem. But if it takes multiple days, if we're going into Thursday and we don't know who the president is, that's going to be an issue. Now, CNBC crunched some of the prior election numbers for us, what the markets have done before and after elections. And you can see here the S&P 500 after the election in 2020 was up 2.2% the day after. A week later, you were up 5.23%, and a month later, you were up 8.83%. So good returns there, 2020. Obviously, there was a lot of money printing. There was a lot of accommodation during this period in time. So I don't think that's as relevant to look at just because of the other dynamics that were taking place. But 2016, the markets were up 1.11% the day later. A week later, markets were up 1.91%. A month later, you were up 5%. And a year later, you were up 4.64%. So that's still pretty good, right? 2012, you were down 2.4% a day later and down about 4% the week later. And you actually ended the year down negative 0.15%. And in 2008, obviously, we were going into a recession at that time. The day after the election results, markets were down 5.27%. So the markets threw up pretty hard November 4th, 2008. And a week later, you were down 10.62%. So sometimes elections can lead to some pretty extreme volatility. The median return the day later after an election is negative 0.66%. So you normally do sell off the day after the election. A week later, you tend to be down about a third of 1%. 1 month later, you're actually up 2.38% for the median return, and for the year up 3.72%. So in the very near term, even after an election, it still tends to be a kind of a weak period for markets, at least historically. Now, bond yields for the 10-year Treasury are falling 6 basis points today, down to 4.30%. We're still up a lot. 6 basis point drop on the 10-year Treasury is a pretty big drop for any given day, but considering how much we've run, how much yields have went up, it's really not that big. So it is good, but it's not that big. Okay, hopefully that makes some sense. The real $1 million question is, how do bonds react to, let's say, a Trump win or a Kamala win from prevailing, kind of sentiment and positioning and commentary we've heard from investors? If a Kamala win were to happen, you would see 10-year Treasury yields will most likely fall. If a Trump win were to happen, you would most likely see 10-year Treasury yields go up. Now, that's the normal correlation, but it's the reasoning behind a rise in 10-year Treasury yields that has been worrisome. I mean, we only had 12,000 jobs created last month, and 10-year Treasury yields went up 10 basis points that day. That's not supposed to happen. You should have dropped 10 basis points. So there is a really big disconnect here, and it has to do with the election. So after, if, let's say, Trump does win, the bond market could become unhinged, and yields could rally a lot more from here. We could be talking 5% or 5.5%. There's really no telling when a market like the bond market comes unhinged. It's kind of like the stock market, right? When you're going into a COVID-like event, it's going to fall. You don't know how much it's going to fall. Same thing to the upside. When markets get all behind a certain narrative, there's no telling how high they can go. Right? That's kind of where you're at with 10-year Treasury yields, and that I think could make investors nervous, especially if markets are correct in pricing in a Trump win and if Trump does win. So I will specifically be watching the bond market. It could also make sense why you would see bond yields actually come down after anyone wins, because we've seen yields run up into the election itself. Could be a situation of, buy the rumor, sell the news. Here on the day today, the Russell 2000 is up 0.62%, again, because of yields falling on that 10-year Treasury. NASDAQ is in the red, negative 0.03%, S&P down 0.1%, and the Dow, which is fascinating, is down 0.5%. Usually the Dow and Russell kind of move together because they're both economically sensitive. The Dow's not as sensitive to interest rates and yields like the Russell is, so I guess that makes sense from that perspective. But normally you see the Russell and the Dow kind of trade together. Now, the Dow and the Russell, again, structurally are a lot different, but that's the correlation we have experienced in recent days. Nonetheless, here on the day today for Tesla stock is bearish, at least sentiment at 44. Yesterday you were neutral at 52, so not as good as yesterday. Message volume is normal at 46. Yesterday it was low at 41, and the participation ratio is high at 58. Option activity today for Tesla stock is coming in very positive order value of 84%. You have 130 different trades totaling $98.06 million. And as I explained previously here on the channel, you do have 2 times as many calls relative to puts for this week, so there is a lot of bullish positioning in Tesla that we can definitively say. So people are betting Tesla stock's going to go higher over the rest of this week. Now, short interest, our free flow sitting at 2.84%, $19.72 billion currently sold short in the stock, 79.21 million shares that are sold short. And here on the day today, you actually have 1.08 million shares that are being covered on. So there's actually shorts covering today on net relative to shorts selling Tesla stock, which is pretty interesting given Tesla's down almost 2%. CNN's Fear and Greed Index is coming in today at 44. Friday, you were at 48. So sentiment is dropping a little bit today, which again makes sense because markets are red. Google Trends data did show a pretty large uptick, if you will, for the Cybertruck. Cybertruck went from 37 to 43. Model Y dropped a little bit from 35 to 34. The Model 3 went up from 29 to 30, and the Model S and X staying unchanged at 12 and 8 respectively. Percent of stocks currently trading above their 50-day moving average is at 50.32%. So today you see 2.2% of all stocks breaking above that 50-day moving average. So despite what you're seeing on the headline markets, there are a decent number of stocks that are actually doing well today. From a technical perspective, Tesla was down over 3% at one point today. You did find some support that started to come in around that 20-day moving average, currently at about $237.34 per share. If you get back to that level, that's going to be a drop of about $7 from here. To me, it's possible, but given Tesla's earnings, you really would need to see a risk-off environment for the markets as a whole to really see Tesla fall materially lower than that, because right below that, at $234.74, you do have the 50-day moving average, which is going to serve as another very solid level of support. So as long as things don't go bad here in markets, I think Tesla is going to do just fine for the rest of this week. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to conclude this video. That is all of your major news and your events that have taken place today in markets. You did also have factory orders month over month that came in at negative 0.5%. The estimate was negative 0.4%, but markets really don't care about anything, really, let's be quite honest, until this election is over with coming tomorrow. I don't even know how big of a catalyst the Fed is going to be on Thursday if we have some kind of contested election. But we will talk about that more in the next video, so stay tuned to the channel for that one. In the meantime, you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.